The Arrogant History of White Ben by Clemence, Dane, Chapter 24, Fire, Fire, Burn Stick. At the other end of Bothering's telephone stood Teddy Barnstable, with Thetis in attendance. They were standing in the parlor of the gardener's cottage, which lay beyond the glass houses, divided by a lane from the rookery field. Teddy Barnstable was having difficulty in dialing, for the electric light had been cut off, as a war economy, and all who might have produced candles were down at the bonfire. He had to rely on his cigarette lighter and the red illumination of the flames. "Hello! Hello! I want the castle! I want Lord Bothering. That's absurd. There are 20 people on duty. Well, of course I haven't finished. I haven't had him yet. Oh, is that you, Jenny? Can I speak to him? Is that you, sir? Young white boys fired the rookery. Piles of hay soaked in petrol under each tree. Whole groves gone up in glory. Well, sir, by the time I got there, half Kent turned up. Out of the works, women, refugees. Never saw such faces. Starvation, most of them. Quite shook me up. So it has Campion. He's talking to them from the top of my car. Illico arranged it. Illico Smith, yes, born organizer. But Campion's the born speaker. Yes, sir, I'd say it's quite a situation. Well, sir, I did what I could, but Sweat said it was your land and that you were responsible for the cessation anyway. But Miss Sweat Palmer's here. This. And he thrust the receiver to her with such a jerk that the telephone fell off the piano, and they had to scramble for it in the darkness. When Thys restored communications, she heard Bothering's growl, and she began to flutter and squeal. Is it about Edgar? Well, you see, we tried and he won't budge. But there's a message for you from Mr. Smith that he's unable to leave. But it's all going according to plan, and they'll listen to any friend of White Ben. Well, that's what they're calling him. Oh, but he's doing what he likes with them. He's like the man in Hyde Park with the sparrows, screamed Thys, inevitably choosing the simile which best belittled the situation. And the journalist and Teddy Barnstable yelped. He snatched the receiver. She means, sir, that they'll take leadership. Yes, I think you should come, sir. There's never been such a stroke of luck from our angle. Yes, sir. The noon editions I was thinking of, too. You can get here in 10 minutes if you... Right. He put down the receiver and turned to his companion. I've got to get on to office headquarters and dictate the story. Jenny will check up on the policy angles while Latimer brings Bothering down. And you, young Thys, you go up and glean what you can, if you ever hope to... What? Said Thys, her hands on her hips, her large eyes rapturous. Hope to what, Teddy? You know well enough. Then into the telephone. Hello! But he caught her swinging arm and brushed it ecstatically as she passed him. Thetis raced off obediently to the rookery field, which was filled with spectators and constantly reinforced by single figures and little groups which emerged from the walls or woodland or came racing over the pastures. The nearest town was 5 miles away, but England was an endless village street in the 1950s, and Kent practically a camp, with the dispossessed sleeping under makeshift tents and the unemployed tramping the roads in leaderless bands. The monster bonfire naturally attracted these homeless even more than the well-to-do, and in an hour they had formed such an assembly as the government spent its scanty home police in preventing. There were indeed a number of elderly policemen present, but they would have been swamped if they had attempted to assert authority. Fortunately, there were as many men as women in the crowd. In those days, women were the inflammable element in any crowd. The women had lost their patriotism when they lost their men and their homes, and when the first war prosperity ended in penury, they became dangerous. Then the raging women had fallen back upon gleaning, as the phrase ran. They had hand-picked England from its country rubbish heaps to the bombed quarters of its cities. Many died, yet the homeless female crowd was constantly augmented by its broken menfolk, and modern historians agree that it was unquestionably the stoicism, the good temper, and the handyman ways of these disused, diswanted men which saved the prosperous for open spoliation. The Englishmen had seen the game in other countries and controlled their women. War can't last much longer. Steady, old girl. Now the men believed that their patience was in the way of being rewarded. It was cessation night. The good times were coming back. Here, in proof, was provided the prime delight, the English ecstasy, a free show in open air, for even incendiary bombs could not destroy the age-old taste of bonfires, and the English would be pleased to remember the 5th of November when they had forgotten their world war. Thetis pushed her way toward the cars, which had been stranded halfway between her and the bonfire. The moraine of straw, hay, and fallen branches had taken, as if in planned derision, the form of a red-hot crow's nest, each scarlet twig outlined in white and fringed with blue flames. Each nest-laden bough had split away, but a tuft or two of needles and cones still remained upon the ash-white crests of the trees. Every now and again one of them bent a little, its ash blue like thistledown. Its weight ripped it free of the roasted stem, and it fell down lightly and ignominiously into the furnace below, from which issued a never-ceasing cat's purr. Round this pyre some spectators were still gathered, drawn even in sweltering July by the chance of a free warm-up, but the crowd was thickest about the 3 motor cars. White Ben stood on the roof of the middle one, with Illico in support, while to the right and left Petal and Trelawney took charge of overflow meetings. Trelawney, scarlet with excitement and heat, expounded the whole gospel of organized freedom. Petal and Antonius, in the kindly firelight, confined himself to ravishing smiles, badminton rallies of chaff, and repeated admonitions to the mob to disregard him and hark to him in the middle. You kick your way into the crowd, boys. You listen to him while you get the chance. Don't you listen to Trelawney over there jawing about the government. Nor to me either. You listen to Ben Campion. I wish to God Ben was the government. We'd have beer and sausages all right once he was in charge. Remember what the soldier said. The response was instantaneous. We'll have beer and sausages once the world is free, roared the hollow-cheeked crowd. We'll have wine and cottages. Kiss my girl for me. He's holding him, isn't he? Muttered This to Illico as she squirmed up at his elbow, pink and panting. Illico nodded. The clothes have done the trick, said he. He's White Ben already. Now they've labelled him, he's safe. White Ben wears white clothes, talks about crows, and we like him. Now we needn't think any more. Good old Ben, he bellowed. Cessation is not peace, Trelawney was screaming. The class wars are going on. Class? What does he mean? Ben's arrogant voice picked up the phrase, mocking it. I do not know about classes. I only know about things that have happened to me. Snow and rain. The wind freezing my backbone. No shelter. No one speaking to me. No one caring if I am hungry or thirsty. No one thinking that I could want a kind word. Get on with your work, you scarecrow. That is the life I know. Ah! He cried to a woman. You look at my nice new clothes, but they are not my own clothes. I never had new clothes of my own. She, he pointed suddenly to the embarrassed Thetis, gave me this coat because my own was too ragged to bring into dinner with an MP and a policewoman and Lord Bothering. Is it true? He bent his firelit eyes upon her, and all other eyes were instantly fixed on her also. Yes, I suppose so, mumbled Thetis, appalled by the sudden swing over of faces. You hear her? He turned, and the faces swung up and back to him in another single pinkish motion. Well then, do not talk to me about classes or class. The man over there with the red hair, his name is Trelawney, and he is one of my teachers. He is right to say no peace yet, but he is wrong to talk of class. My war, our war, is against crows. Say it again, cried a voice high in the crackling silence. Crows, crows, I will say it as often as you please. Only the crows are our enemies. "Come away, boys!" cried the same voice. "He's a loony!" But the crowd snarled round the speaker, like a tired beast snapping a fly. It did not want sanity. To these masses, cessation was an end of suspense rather than the return of comfort. The war was over, but so was life. There could be no miraculous victory now. The sirens said so. But there, high above the crowd's despair, stood a lunatic who had dived into the deeps of unreason to bring up hope. Listen to White Ben. The furnace light danced gaily upon his flapping arms and white face, blessedly confusing the judgment, confusing even the sense of sight, but not the hearing. Listen, listen. It is your own fault that you are poor and it is your own fault that you are poor and homeless and hungry. Why is there not enough to go around? I will say it for you. Because the crows take half, and then the half of the other half, and the half again of that. And you let them. Think, make a picture of your field in the spring. You plant your seedlings in long rows, back-breaking work, but before your bent back is turned, the crows are there, and gone is half your labor, and half your profit. Is it not true? And of your half profit, what is left when the buyer has taken his share, and the railway, and the market man, and the shopman? There is the income tax on that cabbage, too. How little do you get if you are selling a cabbage? But if you are buying that cabbage, how much do you pay, you fools? All you earn so heartily, I tell you it goes to feed the crows. Bothering's arrival, muttered Illicoat at this as the car rolled smoothly through the open gate and stopped. There was enough light in the sky for him to distinguish Latimer, Old Bus, and Teddy Barnstable. The three got out and began to push their way through the crowd. Its members made way for them inertly, like people disturbed by latecomers at a theater. Ben was speaking very fast now and reckoning awkwardly on his fingers. Eggs, chicks, leverets, lambs, game, the entrails of sheep. But they are not content with these. They must have salad with their meats. So they take the produce also of your fields and orchards. They leave you so little that you, the food growers, have to buy your own food from across the sea, and to pay for it you borrow money till you go bankrupt, and then you go to the towns at last and leave your dear friends to the crows. Can you deny it? He demanded. They could not. Then I say, thundered White Ben, that you must be protected against your own weakness. The crows are not just a pest of the fields. They are a pest here in our minds. And he banged at his own forehead with his clenched fists. We do not begin to understand the crows or their aims. It is to deceive us that some of them are solitary. Is it to deceive us that some of them are solitary? Then why do the worst crows, the rooks, always flock together? First, one builds a nest. The next year, 10. In a few years, thousands are roosting in your woods. And when they alight on the corn, whole fields are purposely laid waste. They say, you are quality, but we are quantity. And we will rook you, however many of us you kill. They imperil human sovereignty, I tell you. If the crow is allowed to spread and plunder, he will end by inheriting the earth. He stopped, panting. His voice was beginning to flag. Illico suddenly glanced up at him and began to edge closer and fumble in his own breast pocket. Now you will say, resumed Ben, still panting, what is being done against them? I answer, nothing. Our government has no plan. You would think it had never heard of crows. Never mind, I have a plan, and this is it. Make your numbers your strength. You are so poor and weak and broken, but also so very many. Almost as many as the crows, but you need a leader. Come to me. Tell all the numbers of your friends to come. Then, all together, we will march upon London, or wherever else perches this government, which is kind to crows. It is not its roost in London? He appealed to Bothering, who had somehow materialized in the graying light at his elbow, shoved from the rear by the powerful muscles of Teddy Barnstable, and steadied as he climbed to the roof by Illico's hand. And we'll pause there.